Historically speaking, the term argot referred to the slang of criminals, who used it in order not to be understood by policemen. This linguistic phenomenon appeared in the 13th century, even if the first written sources of argot are dated back to the 15th century, when François Villon used it to compose his ballads dedicated to the coquillards, the criminals of a gang called La Coquille. At the same time in Britain, during the 16th and the 17th century, a particular genre of literature developed, the rogue literature, which dealt with thief stories using a similar language called cant. The main author of these stories is Thomas Harman, who wrote in 1566 a caveat or warning for common cursitors, vulgarly called vagabonds, a book containing direct interviews with vagabonds as well as a canting dictionary. Argot raised always more interest among artists and literates, who started to use argot more and more, both as a linguistic code, through which they told their story, and as the subject of their works. However, in 1628, with the work Le jargon ou langage de l'argot réformé, the author Olivier Chereux gave it a new meaning, that is, the profession of beggars organized in corporations. So, from this moment forward, the term argot lost its single definition of slang of criminals and took the meaning of slang of beggars. In the 20th century, due to deep social and economic changes, along with the disappearance of the great low-life organizations, the argot consolidated its bound with popular language, and they merged together. Furthermore, it is possible to divide argot into categories: professional argot, characterized by specific terms, and sociological argot, the typical slang of a certain group or social environment. Although the original function of argot was cryptic, during the centuries also the play function developed itself, since young people reinvented the language by mangling it and by creating new neologisms. In order to meet this crypto-play function, argot needs to constantly renew its vocabulary. That is why there are several synonyms for one word. For example, argent, money, can be called cash, artiche, thune, oseille. In order to create new words in argot, people have to resort to both semantic processes, which are giving a new meaning to an existing word, using the figures of speech, for example, casquette, hat, indicates by methonymy the bus ticket inspectors, or using the loan word of terms coming from foreign languages, for example, looker, comes from the English verb to look, and formal processes, which modify the structure, the orthography, and the pronunciation of a word, the most famous of which is Verlan. As far as it is concerned, it literally means backwards, and it is based on the inversion of a word's syllables. For example, femme, woman, becomes meuf. The Parisian argot was born in the banlieue, where disadvantaged and emigrated families live, struggling to find their place in the society. As a consequence, a social breakdown is combined with a linguistic one, since the Parisian society is dominated by Standard French, perceived always more as the language of power, and so rejected. The people's desire to distinguish themselves from it gave rise to another language, full of argotic terms and expressions that prove the identity of the talkers. Thanks to its lively and creative character, argot is an important linguistic baggage for writers, since it is a rich and expressive language. In the 19th century, argot started to be used in literature for stylistic reasons, since it is a spontaneous language, useful to describe a character or a social milieu, or to create a sort of contrast with the language used for the narration. Before analyzing the use of the argot in the works of Hugo, Céline and Queneau, it is crucial to understand the difference between the literature in argot and the argot in literature. When the uses of argot is limited to dialogues, we are talking about argot in literature. Whereas, when the narrator tells the story using this slang, that is literature in argot. In Le Dernier Jour d'un Condamné by Victor Hugo, the use of argot is called interdiegetic, that is to say that the main character uses and teaches argot to the reader. The author's objective is to show the despair, the agony of those who are sentenced to death, through a cryptic and hideous language. Despite the fact that argot gives more pathos to the story, Hugo condemns it, since he believes that it is too linked to the criminal underworld, and so it has a bad reputation. In Céline's novel Voyage au bout de la nuit, he gives dignity to the French slang, which becomes a central element of his story. Céline uses argot to express his disregard and refusal of patriotism, as well as the brutality and the cruelty of war, that Céline first-hand experienced. In the novel, the author recurs to the typical First World War soldier's vocabulary, the so-called argot des poilus, to show the meaninglessness and the absurdity of war. So argot becomes the language of oppressed people, and his writing becomes existential. In the novel Zazie dans le métro, Queneau refuses to use traditional French by using the oral language, establishing himself as the pioneer of the new French. His language is full of wordplays and neologisms, whose aim is to ridicule the French spoken by adults. Queneau wants to create a linguistic provocation that is necessary to unmask the French language hypocrisy, ambiguity and duplicity. Zazie is the voice of a pure and direct language that is in contrast with the cryptic and artificial one spoken by adults, thus showing the real nature of things. In other words, this study has revealed the argot's numerous and polyhedral characteristics and functions, that has earned worthily its own place in literature, by proving itself to be a creative means in the hands of writers able to express at the same time despair, irony and hate. But how can we translate argot into Italian? The translators Yasmina Melawa and Dominique Vittoz understood that it was necessary to use dialects and regionalisms in order to keep the same expressiveness and liveliness of the French argot. Yasmina Melawa, in her translation of Vaneecke, La Petite Marchande de Prose, recurs to regionalisms to translate the word russe, which means police, using the northern Italian pula that is universally known. As far as the translation of Camilleri's Sicilian dialect into the French language is concerned, the French-Italian translator Dominique Vittoz recurs to the French Provençal dialect because of its lexical richness, which is able to keep the hallmarks of the Sicilian dialect. For example, the verb babbiare, which means to joke, is translated using the French verb gandoiser. Therefore, we can say that the use of dialects and regionalisms is an effective means for writers to translate the French argot by respecting the register and the expressivity chosen by the author.